they don't suck. You suck because you're not converting the leads. Your CSRs suck. Your booking rate sucks, right? So a lot of those things are actually result of poor branding, because when they call, they're ambivalent about whether they should even do work with you,
right?
Because the brand hasn't communicated the reason why they want to do. Some of our best performing brands, their booking rates are like 94%.
Welcome back to another episode of the Mission Control Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Stearns. Today we got a very special guest in a very special place. We're at the Roofing Process Conference here with Dan Antonelli, KickCharge Creative. What's up, brother?
Good seeing you, my man.
Dude, listen, the pleasure is all on this side of the camera, the table, the chair. I don't know. It's a real pleasure. Thank you for you tuning in today, and thank you for the team at Roofer for help making this happen. Instant roof quotes, roof measurements, clean and pristine proposals that will give your target audience no choice but to buy from you. Click the link below. They'll know I sent you. You'll be happy you did. Branding.
Yeah, man.
It's I feel like it's the offensive lineman of a company's formula. Like, it's a really, really, really important job. Everyone celebrates the receiver that catches the ball, the quarterback that throws it, right? Oh, this ad made me this money, but they don't ever talk about branding. I feel like it's often overlooked and undervalued.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I feel the same.
Tell me more about that.
You definitely see people have a deeper appreciation once they experience what a brand can actually do for them.
Yeah.
So a lot of people initially don't understand the value, don't understand how it affects KPIs, how it affects marketing spend, how it affects culture. And they don't understand it because they never experienced it. Mm-hmm. And then when they experience what it does to their business, then they're like, oh my God, this is something I wish I had invested in so much sooner or earlier, because it's a game changer for so many businesses.
Hey man, I'll tell you, it's the same thing when we, even if they have a strong brand, but they don't have a good website and they can't fathom spending what it takes to like build that type of immersive experience that we want every one of their customers to experience when they come visit them.
Yep. They're
like, they go to watching them. That's the joy of what I do, is like watching them from the point of being like, that seems crazy to me that I would invest that much in something like this, to, dude, I get so many fucking compliments on my website. Like, and the people are pointing out to me what they love about my website before they buy from me. I'm like, oh man, shucks, this makes it all worth it.
Exactly. Yep. 100%.
So what I've noticed, so I've worked in the roofing space for a little over a decade now. And one thing that I've noticed has been consistent is that y'all love to be able to make direct attribution. I did A, I got B, I made C, right? And it's nice when it's always a super clean story.
Yep. It's
not always as clean as we'd like it to be. There are some instances where there's less direct attribution. And sometimes it's an accumulation of different things that are working together harmoniously towards the same objective. How can people use their brand and feel confident that they know that it's working? Like, is there a way?
Well, I mean, there are some things that happen almost immediately. So even things like branded keyword searches. So you run a business right now, and a lot of roofing companies especially are virtually invisible in the communities that they serve. They don't wrap their trucks. They don't use site signs. They have generic logos. They have things that people don't care about. They're not invested in learning more because it's something that blends into the background. So you see a lot of times when they do something that's disruptive, when they do something that's unique, that stands out, all of a sudden people remember their names. They're typing in their names directly into Google instead of generic, search terms like roofing repair near me or roofing company near me. So sometimes you see right away when you look at their analytics, and you can see spikes right after the rebrand, because suddenly now they're becoming visible in their community. They're becoming this 5 mile famous where people know who they are within that community. And then you start seeing things like average tickets. Like, how does the brand affect average tickets? How does it affect booking rates? How does it affect close rates? How does it affect inbound keyword searches? And then even just conversion rates on the website itself. So there are benchmarks that you can do literally from day one when that brand launches, and then you can compare them to the results afterwards. And you see that, I'm sure, when you have a company that invests in a new brand, and then what happens after, like how much better the results are for you, what the conversion rates does. Because keep in mind too, everything that we're doing with a brand is two things. We're trying to make sure that they remember your name, and we're trying to make sure that that name means something to them and helps them understand what the experience will be like before they even hire you. So everything that branding is doing is trying to control what Mrs. Jones thinks before you even ring the doorbell, before she calls your CSR, What does she think she's going to get if she hires you? And why are you different? Why do you deserve to be paid more than someone else? And that's what the brand should be answering. It should be answering those questions. It should be living in her mind rent free when she needs service. Because listen, you're out on the road, you got a branded truck. She sees it. She doesn't need a roof today. She doesn't need a roof in 6 months. Maybe she needs a roof next year. Will she remember that impression? Or is she going to go on Google and she's going to type in roofing company near me? So all we're doing is trying to live in her mind. And how do we live in her mind? And how do we make her think something great about hiring you?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I mean, there's a lot of, like, you have brand, but there's a lot of things that roll up into what your brand is and what story are they telling themselves from their preemptive exposure to you before you ever talk to anybody, right? And it's funny, I don't know how strong my brand is, and I feel like I would be biased and say I have a strong brand, I have a weak brand. But what I'll tell you is when we do things that are brand oriented, like creating video, after the first few weeks of creating video, I had a guy reach out to me. He's like, man, I've been watching your content for years. I call it the grocery store effect. When you go in the grocery store, someone sees you like, man, I see your brand everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the type of, and they may have just seen a really nice wrap truck once or twice, right?
But it's stuck.
It's
and that's
stuck,
the thing.
right? So how do we create that sticky, memorable brand? And I guess what is that brand, like you said, what's the story that's being told? How do you communicate to them? Like, how do you feel about a brand having a story and being able to articulate with a customer sitting there directly like, what the story is? Should there be a conversation about that?
It would be great if there was, because listen, you look at so many roofing company brands and the vast majority of them are so generic. So they have the clip art rooftop logo or the house
silhouette of a roof
or the clip art hammer. And those aren't things that connect with her on any deeper level. Right. So when we've done brands that use even just some animal mascots or things that are more playful or fun, they sort of disarm that consumer because they're afraid of who's coming to their home. They have a bias against the contractors in general, and roofers probably more than other contractors, sadly. Okay. And I'm not saying that that's just the reality.
We're just stating facts here, folks.
You know, so everything that we can do to make her feel something about that experience, put her at ease. And then even talk about your why. The thing is you could ask 100 roofing companies, what is your brand story? And I bet you 99 of them would have no idea how to even speak about what is unique about their service or their brand story itself. Right? So you can communicate a brand story that connects with her and makes her feel something. If your why is wrapped around the service that you provide and that's communicated in that brand and that storyline, again, those are things that are going to make her feel different about the experience. Those are things that are going to make her feel like there's a reason why I might pay a premium for this service. Because I'm not looking for the cheapest guy. I'm looking for a guy that's going to do an amazing job for my home. I'm going to make this investment in my roof. And if something goes wrong with it, I can count on this company to come back and make it right for me.
Right.
Those are all the things that she's worried about. All the things that she's trying to figure out comparing you versus the other guy. Because she's not just probably getting one estimate.
Probably not.
You know? So all those things, you know, there's a song and I talk about it in when I'm on stage. There's a song by the Suicidal Tendencies called Subliminal. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but the refrain is they're fucking with you subliminally. And branding to a certain extent is almost doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to make them believe something about the experience. And I'm not saying don't be authentic about it.
Sure.
Like I'm not trying to create something that doesn't exist, that isn't real, but I am trying to make her feel something positive about your brand and use of colors, use of imagery, avoiding the obvious. Those are all things that help people remember. Even naming is so critical. Right? So a lot of roofing companies just have the worst names that no one will ever assign a promise to because maybe it's their last name, maybe it's initials. Those are all things that are so hard for people to remember and also so hard to assign promise to. So if you were Stearns Roofing, why would I think anything amazing about that in the absence of a lot of advertising or a lot of ad spend?
Yeah, the story that you're going to have to tell to make that feel memorable and trustworthy is so much substantially higher.
It's expensive, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have that opportunity. I feel like I don't have that luxury for my clients to need to spend hundreds, thousands of dollars to understand what's unique about your story. I would rather them look at that brand and already know. And that's the difference, right? So that's why naming is also such a huge piece of you know, whether or not the brand will work well, whether it be more memorable, sticky, communicate promise.
I asked Roof Tiger, are you familiar with Ben?
Ben.
Yeah, when I started working with Ben a few years back, I said, well, what is the story behind Roof Tiger? I just have to know. He's like, well, when I was a kid, my dad always called me Tiger, right? And we're doing roofing. He's like, so it was important to me. It's kind of like homage to my dad. I was like, that's a good story.
Yeah.
I like that. It evokes a certain type of emotion out of you.
And look at what he's done with the brand, right? So you see the trucks that have all the tiger stripes. You see
fucking Nike Prestos for everyone on his team with the tiger stripes.
and I bet you within his community, he is very well known just because the uniqueness of what he's done with that brand name. So Roof Tiger, I know it's, a fearless company that's going to do this crazy job. And this is a great job for my home. But more importantly, I see those patterns on his truck and immediately I'm thinking Roof Tiger, Roof Tiger, Roof Tiger. So like that is really the ultimate goal, right? Because you think when someone in his community needs a roof in 2 years, they wouldn't remember having seen his trucks and that brand.
And the really funny thing was, we were talking after, he's in Peoria, so it's not, he's not in the heart of DFW, but so it's not nearly as competitive. So we started doing SEO for him. And I mean, he started out ranking the Peoria Zoo for like anything relating tiger search. And that's not just a testament to what the Sun's doing.
Awesome,
like Dad's brand, right? Yeah. He gets so many branded keyword searches where it's like, okay, if it's fucking tiger, it's Ben, right? And it's his company.
Yeah.
It was absolutely crazy. The devil's in the details. I think sometimes when people are considering, okay, I got to rebrand something, they're overwhelmed because of what might happen, the amount of work that's going to go in. What does that transition look like? And there's a couple things we're going to talk about here, but I'd like to point out, I recently, when we were upstairs at the trade show, on the expo floor, you showed me Planet Roof. Why would somebody, it wasn't remarkably different. There were a lot of similarities, but there were some, what I would see as substantial, but what somebody who's doesn't have a trained eye might look at as inconsequential. Like, why would I pay? Why does this matter? Yeah. So talk about some of the changes that you made to the brand. And if somebody had trepidation about what it would cost to do something like that, why it's important, why, and how those subtle changes could impact their business.
Yeah. I mean, in that particular instance, it's a good example because well-known brand within the community. They're a pretty large company. A lot of people know them. It's a good name also, Planet Roof. Like it evokes the notion that they're very good at what they do. And I think when we looked at their brand and looked at what it was communicating to someone who had never worked with them, there was an aspect of the way that particular mascot was created that felt very aggressive to me. And not just to me, but to who that target demographic is, which is a woman. Right? So what does she feel when she looks at this? What is her takeaway? What is her emotion about this? Is there a connection to this? What does she think she's going to get? And all we really did is we kept the brand colors because they were so well branded with the colors. But the mascot we took from looking more aggressive and actually, frankly, he looked angry. Yeah. And we made him look friendly. And we changed a couple aspects. We put like a roof on him. We made it a little more obvious that it was actually for a roofing company. But we kept the foundation of having a mascot that was based around the globe, but we made it friendly. We made it fun. Yeah, right. And we're also just thinking about, well, what about participation in community events? How do we become this 5 Mile famous? It's not just buying AdWords. It's not just buying LSA. It's what are we doing to make our brand name memorable in the community? So imagine that mascot made into a physical mascot and you have a booth at a home show. You're telling me that I'm walking with my kids, I'm not going to want to have them take a picture with this big friendly looking globe, this Planet Roof guy. Right? So, and again, you take that picture and now it's 2 years later and I need roofing. Oh, what was that company we took the picture with, that big Planet?
Hold on, let me go back to my Facebook feed.
It's Planet Roof. Yeah. Planet Roof, that's right. So to your point earlier, some of it is long game, right? But that's the whole notion, right? So guys are like, well, I got to keep expanding. I got to keep going into other markets. I'm like, dude, nobody knows you within 5 miles of your company anyway. Yeah. Why are you going into other markets? Focus on your own community first and make sure everyone in your community knows exactly who you are. And the brand is so important in that aspect. Even like the site signs, like guys get these, basic 18 by 24 square site signs with generic colors and the homeowner's driving by. Like, why am I going to turn and look at it? Yeah. What is compelling about that imagery that makes me want to turn? But if it's apple green and purple, like from Mun's Roofing, and the mascot's popping off the side of it, and it's visually interesting. Oh, what was that? Yeah, oh, that's right. And I saw it on my neighbor's driveway. So my neighbor used them. That's instilling trust. These are all signals that the homeowner's getting. So keep in mind, like every single impression is a signal to that homeowner. And what are we doing to control that signal?
Yeah, I think about it. It's like if you see an attractive person, you're more likely to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
If you see somebody you don't find attractive, how many times are you going to do one of these?
Yeah.
Probably not nearly as often. We want to make your brand the hot girl.
Yeah. but you know the Seth Godin who wrote the book Purple Cow, like the same theory applies to really branding. And that's why colors are so important. So, you know, if people haven't read the book or know what the Purple Cow means, it's basically he's talking about driving in the countryside and seeing all these cows. And he's not from the countryside, so the first cow he sees, he thinks, oh wow, there's a cow there. And then he keeps driving, he keeps seeing more and more cows. And an hour later, he stops looking at the cows because they're not interesting anymore because he's seen a lot of them. But suddenly, there was a purple cow. And now he turned his head to look because there was a purple cow.
Yeah.
So what are we doing in the community to be that purple cow? And it's not just making your trucks pink and purple or polka dots, because that will get you noticed.
Yeah.
You need to also communicate the promise that goes along with it. So some guys too make the mistake of making their trucks super loud. And yes, I maybe remember seeing them, but I don't expect a great experience hiring you. So that's the balance. Like you can be disruptive and still deliver promise. That's the ideal way to do it.
Yeah, I tell people, like when they're talking about brand, I'm like, clear, concise, consistent. Like clear, who are you? What do you do? What do you provide?
Yeah.
Do it consistently across all your channels. There should be 100% continuity between your yard signs, your websites, your flyers, everything that you're doing.
Every single touch point.
And do it clear, concise, and consistent. If you do those three things, and you have a strong,
And the other thing too, when it comes to closing the sale, all those signals that they've seen are helping with that process. So who do they want to do business with? They want to do business with people they know, that they like, and that they trust.
Yeah.
And all those impressions that they've seen over time are helping with that. Now, if I need my phone to ring next week, it's branding isn't going to solve that problem on day one.
Right.
That's long game. Then you got to invest in things like LSA and things like that to get the immediate result.
Call me.
But remember, if I've seen the brand in the community, and then even if I did click on that paid ad, and then I go see the names of the companies show up in the listings, oh wait, I've seen them. I saw them on my neighbor's driveway. I saw them at the supermarket. Like they're local to me. I trust them. Like all those signals are going to make that ad spend that much more effective.
1,000%.
You know, so you've seen the results. Like you've got guys that have good brands, and you know the results, and you've got guys that have weak brands that, you know, maybe have a magnetic sign on their truck, for Christ's sake, right? And you know how hard it is to get conversions on those sites versus the guys who are visible in the community. Like you see, you have the data. Like you see exactly running the same campaign for one guy with a good brand versus another guy with a weak brand.
And usually the guy with the weak brand doesn't want to accept the fact that that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
Because it's not as it's like, look, I can tell you because A, B, and C that you might want to, and it's like, maybe you guys should do a better job, Mike.
I think, and I'm gonna back you up on this sense too, because it's so easy to blame your digital marketing company, and you guys get so much shit in general because everyone's like, a digital marketing company sucks. You know, they're not giving me enough leads, and you're like, you know what? Actually, they don't suck. You suck because you're not converting the leads. Your CSRs suck. Your booking rate sucks. Right? So a lot of those things are actually result of poor branding, because when they call, they're ambivalent about whether they should even do work with you.
Right. Because
the brand hasn't communicated the reason why they want to do. Some of our best performing brands, their booking rates are like 94%. So 94% of the people calling up are booking a job with them. That's unheard of, but they're so visible in the community. They've done so much investing in their branding in the community that everyone that calls knows they're going to get a great job.
There's so much that goes into the equation of, okay, from somebody going to, let's say they're going on Google and searching, to the time that you have a paid contract, right? As far as that journey, there's so many variables and things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
And like sometimes it is the marketing agency.
Exactly.
Sometimes
it is.
It's a very attractive thing to use the marketing agency as a scapegoat.
Yes.
And it's very popular, especially within the roofing community. Like
I
people pile on. No, it's all good.
I feel for you.
I embrace the smoke. Bring it.
Yeah.
You know, but you hit on a few of the things. Like, what is the brand communicating? How does that person feel before they even pick up that phone and decide to call you? Your CSR, how are they answering the phone? What is the tone? How are they greeting them? What's the flow of the conversation? What type of expectation are they setting? Are they booking it on that call with a sales rep, or do they have to wait for a call back from somebody?
Right.
Like, what is the salesperson saying? Are they communicating? Are they answering the phone on the first call? like, what is that experience through and through? And it's like, to blame it on any single thing would be absolutely preposterous. I think it's incumbent upon you as a business owner to take inventory of all these different things into consideration and then make iterations, test things. There's no silver bullet here, right? No. I can't give you a right or wrong answer as far as you should do this, you need to do this. All these things are somewhat circumstantial, which people don't like to hear, but because it's the tedious bullshit that they got to pay attention to.
But a lot of the answers are in the data.
Yeah.
It's right there. Like if you're on Service Titan and you look at your booking rate and your close rate, your average tickets, like the answers are literally right in front of you.
Right.
And how do you leverage that data to make better marketing decisions?
The symptoms.
And also accept ownership.
Right.
At that point too.
That's very important. And a lot of the times the symptoms are more obvious than the actual root cause, right? Because now once we identify the symptoms, I feel like it's less likely that people start digging in. I talked about this earlier, they start taking ibuprofen because their back hurts. Instead of going to a doctor, getting an MRI, and then doing physical therapy to get rid of the underlying issue, they're just treating the symptom.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so my booking rate sucks. That means that I got to spend more money in leads to get my guys more opportunities. That's fucking wrong. Yeah. And I'll be the first one to tell you, if you're like, Mike, we got to increase our budget. I'm like, we got a lot of shit we need to do. Increasing your budget's not one of them. Yeah. Let's figure out how we get more of these calls answered, more of these appointments booked.
Even like as far as close rates, and you look at how many opportunities are still out on the street that we don't follow up on. Dude. We don't use something like Chirp to like automate the process of following up on leads that haven't closed or open estimates. Yeah. Like, so you could look at some of these companies and their open estimates are huge. Imagine if they converted just 10% of them. What would that do to their bottom line? Imagine if their booking rate increased by 10%. Right? So much of that data is right there in front of them. There has to be more accountability on their side to look at that data and then make decisions based on data. But again, all the things we talked about earlier as far as what is the brand doing to help those things or make those things better, make the booking rate better, make your average tickets better, make it feel like there's a reason why I should choose to hire you. Like, those are the things that really move the needle. They're not going to move it day one, but it's going to be something that long-term is a huge piece of why your marketing spend can be lowered, right? So you look at guys who are like, oh my God, I got to spend 10% to grow, right? 10% of my marketing budget, my revenue I have to spend on advertising. And I look at a lot of these companies that say that, and I look at their brand and they have shit brands. And I'm like, I know why you need to spend 10%. Right. Because nobody knows who you are.
Yeah, so you have to consistently put bullets in the chamber to keep firing.
I mean, in my book, I have a chart that talks about the number of people that know the name of a contractor when choosing to hire one, and it's like less than 15% of the people that you are trying to sell to know your name, your own community. So imagine that. Imagine if that was 50% or whatever the number is, right? So nobody knows who you are because you're invisible, because you're not doing things to make yourself known in that community. And all that translates into is I have to spend more money to get my name in front of people instead of doing the basic fundamental things. Like even just looking at the trucks, it's like you cannot buy a cheaper way to promote your business than your vehicles. Your cost per thousand on a branded truck versus billboards, direct mail, LSA, PPC. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's pennies, right? So when you think about the opportunity that you're missing by not even investing in that on the streets, like, oh, well, it's really expensive to wrap a truck. It's like $4,000. I'm like, okay, so you tell me where you're going to get thousands and thousands of impressions for $4,000, which you're going to spend once that lasts 5 years. Yeah. It's insane sometimes. But no, let me just put vinyl lettering on my van. Because I can do that for $300, you know. So it's you know, listen, I'm going to self-promote and buy my book, Branded Not Blanded. If you really want to blow your mind and understand how the psychology of branding works, I wrote this book specifically for home service contractors, and a lot of people read the book. And this is a funny story. Like I had people read the book, and then they message me after reading the book, and they're like, Dan, I'm sick to my stomach right now. I feel violently ill after I've read this book because I've been doing this completely wrong. So that's my self-plug there. But I just think, again, all the things that I learned over the years, I just felt like so many of these mistakes that contractors would be making if they understood. And it's not their fault that they don't know, but this talks so much about those things.
Well, I think a lot of the times you don't know what you don't know. So it's easy to look at like a brand as a brand. Like I have a logo, I have this, I have that. We get it all the time. That's why I asked you that question earlier about Planet Roof and it not being a complete iteration overhaul of something completely different. And like, why would I pay this much for something like this? Like people come to us and, well, okay, you're going to build us a website. Like, okay, so why would I pay you twice what I would pay this person? They're offering to me for this. I'm like, well, because there's substantial differences that may not be flagrantly obvious to you because you don't necessarily know what you're looking for, and that's fine. Like, let's talk about that. Or you're running Google Ads. Like, how is that any different? We've lost tons of money running Google Ads. It's like, well, there's a lot that can go sideways on Google Ads, right? That are going to impact whether it's a great experience, a terrible experience, and all these things. And again, if you don't know what to look for and you're not comparing apples to apples, it's like it's all the same.
Yeah.
Things that are subtle can make a massive impact as far as like website layout. What are you using for your images? Where are you putting credibility badges and partnerships? What is the website structure? How easy is it for people to find content? Are you linking relevant content so when someone lands on your storm inspection page, they can just go right to roof replacement, right? Like these small things that people wouldn't look at and catch as like a contractor mean the world when it comes to, is somebody going to fucking buy from you once they get to your website?
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get what you pay for.
Absolutely.
2025 is upon us. What's one blunder that people can avoid when it comes to brand?
I would just say don't be generic. You know, really try to think about building a brand that is unique, that means something to someone, and that can live in their mind rent-free. So the more generic you are, just the more money you're going to spend marketing in 2025. So try to think differently about your branding. If you're roofing, if you go on Google and you type in roofing company logos and you see you see your own logo show up in the search results on somebody else's name, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, that's an indictment of your brand, not necessarily a testimony to it.
Think about ways in which you can have a brand that doesn't feel exactly the way you think a roofing brand should look. And it's more likely that someone might remember it. Because if it's that rooftop clip art or that hammer, I don't know why Mrs. Jones is ever going to remember that and why she would, think she's going to get an amazing experience, because it just feels like everybody else does.
Yeah, that's smart. That makes a lot of sense. I got a question for you. I've got 5 people that want to recreate my brand for me. And let's say they range from $15,000 to $35,000, start to finish, for whatever that includes. What's one question that I can ask them that I could immediately isolate if they're going to be potentially a good client to work, or a company to work with?
There's a lot of questions you should ask them.
All right, let's get all of them.
Is the artwork original? Is one question, meaning is it something that they can trademark later on?
Not something they ripped off from someone else?
Or clip art, because you can't trademark clip art. So think about that from a perspective is when you ever want to sell your company, for example, do you actually own your own logo? It sounds painfully obvious, but that intellectual property has value, right? So if it's generic, anyone could literally use the same logo and you don't have any recourse. So I would definitely ask that. I mean, of course, you want to ask their experience within the industry, their results, look at what they've been able to do. I like to look at things as far as, again, how much did it move the needle? How much did it affect booking rates, close rates, average tickets, conversion rates on a website? Those are all things to really ask them about. And, I mean, listen, I think experience is a huge part of it. I think, finding people that do branding, they're not graphic designers. And I think people think, oh, like my sign company can do that, or my wrap guy is going to do my logo. And they're amazing people when it comes to printing and installing things, but they're not marketing people. Are they doing research? Are they doing a competitive analysis of your market to say what you should be doing? How are they deciding what colors you should be using? Do they understand consumer psychology? Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And that's sort of the difference between when you're looking at even like crowdsourcing your logo. People are like, oh my God, I'm going to crowdsource my logo.
Yeah.
This is a great idea. I'm going to get 40 people to give me all their different ideas, and then I'm going to pick the one I like and go from there. What makes you qualified to pick your brand? Do you have experience? How many brands have you created? And you're going to be the one to decide what is the lifeblood of your own business. You're qualified to make that decision? Or do you think maybe you should have an expert make that decision for you or help you make that decision? Right?
Yeah, that's always an interesting thing when a customer has input or feedback and things on how things should be done. And, we've seen this 179 times, the same exact scenario. It's like, well, we should do it this way because, especially with contractors, it's always an interesting conversation. And some are more reluctant than others to cede control. And it's like, and at some point it's kind of like, look, I wouldn't call you out to my roof, ask you what I need, and then fucking stand there and watch your crew and tell them they're doing it wrong. Because by the time I made that purchase decision, I trust the fact, based on what you've presented to me, that you know what you're doing.
Yeah. It's like, do you want your homeowner coming up on the roof telling you how to swing the hammer?
Yeah. Or listen, dude, if you came in at 15 degrees east to west, the strike point would be way better. This would be way better install.
So even also that particular question, right? So the notion of designing a brand that you personally like as the owner versus designing a brand that Mrs. Jones likes. And keeping in mind that what you like is somewhat irrelevant to this question. Yeah. Right? I can guarantee you if Mrs. Jones is calling you and knows your brand name and you're making millions of dollars, you're not going to give a shit about what your logo looks like because you're going to be making a shit ton of money. So also just, again, keep in mind, who is the brand designed for? Obviously, I want my clients to love their logos too, but I always tell them the first priority in designing a brand for your company is her. Yeah. I need to make sure that it connects with her. So take yourself out of the equation. I want your input. I want to know what it is, what kind of brands you like, what kind of brands you don't like. But if you like something that I think she doesn't like, it's my job to tell you that that's a bad idea. Right. And you can ignore that or you can accept that. But I'm going to be the one to basically try to do the best to steer you because that's what you hired me for. Right. If you're looking for a yes man, then absolutely go on Fiverr.
They're great.
Tell them exactly what you want.
It'll only be $40.
And good luck with it. And, and you'll get exactly what you pay for. I mean, I always like to say that the most expensive logo you'll ever buy is one you paid the least for. Yeah. It's going to cost you so much in other areas. We didn't even talk about culture. We didn't even talk about recruitment. Like, everyone's like, oh my God, no one wants to work for me. Like, you look at their branding, and I'm like, yeah, I know why no one wants to work for you. It doesn't look like a company I want to be a part of. Right? These are all the hard conversations, but that's the reality. Like, I talk to so many companies that do recruitment, and they're like, Dan, when we work with one of your brands, it is so easy for us to find people because everyone wants to work for these companies because they're going to drive this cool truck. They're going to be wearing this cool uniform. Like, those are things that legitimately employees are looking for.
And you can feel that, right? Like when you walk into a company where people actually enjoy being there and like the energy there versus, I was talking to somebody yesterday and they said, you don't want a culture demon, like somebody where you walk in there and you just feel the fucking omen in the place. And these things are more qualitative, right? They're not quantitative where it's like, this is going to pop out to you when you're reviewing your P&L, right? It's just not, but it's obvious. Like if you're paying attention to it, you could definitely feel it. So I agree with you, man. It reaches so many different parts of your business that I'm glad that we shined a light on some of it. And I hope that this helps at least one person. Yeah. You got any questions for me before we wrap up?
No, I think, listen, you do an amazing job. You have a really hard job. I feel for you so much sometimes because I'm like, you go on these Facebook groups and it's always the digital marketing company is not doing their job. And again, I think so much of it is the owners that also aren't doing what they should be doing to capitalize on every single opportunity that they have to land a customer, to close a job, and then to deal with the unbooked, or the open invoices, the open estimates, I should say. So I think I feel for you on that side. I don't have people that go through the experience of getting a rebrand and then 6 months later they're pissed off at me for something. And I know for you, it's got to be rough sometimes because, they don't understand your world either. And I think that also is a really hard thing for them, because, they don't know what goes into doing your job well. But listen, I know you are one of the people that I know do amazing work, stand-up guy, stand-up organization. You run a great shop and a great crew, and we need more people like you in that world. So.
Yeah, likewise, I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us and provide value for the folks. We appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. And again, shout out to the team at Roofing for help making this happen. And we gone.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.